Yeah, so let's talk about moving data using data pump or a tool called data pump. This is actually an Oracle database. And just to build around what we mean by moving data. You see, if you have to move Oracle database data from one computer to another or to another computer, then this is what we mean by moving data. So it's more of coming up with getting the data or the whole data coming from one computer, especially from the Oracle database, and then you move that particular data to another brand new computer. Or you can also have a data which is actually based on a specific user, such as HR, or a specific schema such as HR, or you want to move, let's say, complete data, that is like the entire database data from that particular computer to a different computer. So this movement of data is actually categorized into around three. One, you can decide to move the entire database from that particular computer to a different computer. You can decide to move schema. Schema means it's either a specific schema like HR. You see, when I talk about the database, it means that if you have multiple users, for example, HR, you have Scott, you have Obama, you have all other users in the database, then if you are to use or you are to move a database, it means that you're moving the entire database. Now, in this case, if you want a specific one, for example, you want only to move HR. If you want to move HR, then you can actually use a schema. You see, you are moving a schema. So, and through that schema, we have tables. Remember what we are targeting. Whether we move the database, we move the schema, we are targeting the database object. So it's either we are moving a specific, all the tables in all the schemas, or we are targeting some few, a certain schema, or we want even some few tables from that particular schema. So for example, if I'm talking about moving the database, moving the database, here I mean that it's either I'm moving HR, I'm moving probably another schema called Scott. Probably if we also have like Obama as a user, then this means that I am actually expected to move the database. Now, in other words, if I'm to use schema, if I'm to move schema or schemas, then this means that I am targeting one of them. Let's say, for example, HR alone. If it is Scott, then it is Scott. If it is Obama, then it is Obama. Now, you can also decide to move tables. And this means that you are supposed to be connected to that particular user, or you are targeting a specific schema. We all know that in in HR schema, we have multiple tables, and these tables ranges from employees, departments, jobs, locations, regions, countries. So you can decide that you want to move, let's say you are targeting only employees table, you are targeting departments table, and probably you're targeting jobs table. So here it means that out of the 7 or 8, yes, Fred? Yes, Fred, are you getting me? Okay. Okay, I'm breaking. Daniel, are you getting me clearly? Who is getting me, Robert? Okay. So let me see what happens. Okay. Okay, let's see. What about now? Okay. Are you getting me now? Okay, just a minute. Okay, so hope I'm clear now. Okay, so when we talk about movement of data, we are targeting the three modes. We are targeting the database. How can we move the entire database, or probably, yeah, like the entire database? That means all the schemas that are there. How can we move the schemas or schema? Of course, we will use the term schemas in terms of as we target a specific schema. We can also talk about the tables. And these tables are, for example, the employees table, the departments tables, and the jobs table. So remember, if you're targeting tables and HR has around, let's say, 5 tables, you see, out of the 5, we are talking about the 3 tables, or moving the 3 tables, or moving the 2 tables. So that means that you're supposed to talk about the tables. But of course, if you are to mention all the tables in there, it's still a good way to also transfer the entire schema, because you're talking about all the tables involved. So, but to cut the story short, you have only to talk about just the schemas if you want to move HR. Now, in this case, we have some prerequisites or some requirements for us to use this particular feature. Now, there are 3 methods or 3 ways or 3 steps we are supposed to be involved with. Now, step number 1, you see, as I'm talking about the data pump, like moving data using data pump is actually a tool used in Oracle database to move data. And of course, when it comes to moving data, we are talking from the perspective that it's more like you want to create a zipped file, which of course is made up of your work or made up of your data from the original database, now moving it to a different, totally different environment where we have a new computer. Or even if we have another database out there in that particular computer and you are lacking some specific schemas, you're lacking some specific tables, you can still remap that particular database. So what happens here is that the steps involved here are very important because it cuts across the database, the schemas, and the tables. The only thing that changes is when you want to specify now, is it the database you're trying to move? Is it the schemas you're trying to move? Or is it the tables you're trying to move? So at this point, you'll find that if you're to make these steps, then of course we have a point where we need to start from. So where do we start from? So I'm going to give you, first of all, the reality here, like what are the 3 steps? And then from there, we will now end up at doing it practically. Now, you see, when it comes to, even before talking about the steps, when it comes to the data pump as a tool, we have some commands because we are supposed to use the Oracle, SQL Plus. So which commands should we involve? Which commands should we involve? So the commands here for data pump, we have 2 utilities. Initially, we had, for example, in the traditional, let's say, for example, in the previous databases, we had, for example, EXP for export. So usually we had this particular command like EXP, then IMP. So EXP is for export, and then IMP is for import. So what happens is in Oracle, of course, the database data pump as a tool, which of course we are meant to apply or use it in 12C and of course in the advanced like 19C and the rest, you will find that instead of using the EXP, since we have this term as data pump, we can actually grab some initials from data pump. And then instead of saying EXP, we can just say EXP DP. So EXP stands for export and then DP for data pump. The same thing happens to IMP, IMP DP. So these are utilities. These are utilities that should be involved. Now, what is the difference when it comes to using EXP DP and IMP DP? What is the difference? Now, you see, if I want to move the database, whether it's the database or schemas or tables from the original, from the current machine, I'm supposed to create the file. I'm supposed to get all the information required or capture all the data. And then I will have something called the EXPDP, like either a log file or a dump file. Because what I'm expecting to have is more like a zipped file of all the information that I intend to take. So EXPDP will create for me the information required for me to transfer or the required for me to move. And then on the other side of IMPDP, then it means that when I get to that particular machine, whether it's a new machine, I will have, or I will be required to use the IMPDP now to import the same data I created using the EXPDP. So at this session, we are going first of all to understand how can we create this particular data from the database point of view, from the schemas point of view, and then from the tables point of view. Now, coming down to now the steps. What are the steps involved? So number one, step one is that you have to create a folder. Okay, you have to create a directory, or you have to create or even make a folder. You see, this is so direct. Create a directory or make a folder. Now, create a directory or make a folder means you have to manually create it. You have to manually create it. And then from there, we can now connect. We can now connect with something called the directory. So we are going to create a directory, which of course is, we are supposed to create it from the Oracle point of view, that is through the SQL+. So this means that you can create a directory or make a folder in any drive, whether you want to create it in C drive, whether you want to create it in E drive, whatever drive you have. As long as that we have to capture or to locate that particular folder. That is step one. Step two, we have to create something called a directory object. We are supposed to create something called the directory object. Now remember, for this one, the first step, it means that we are supposed to open just a folder in any drive. That means we're supposed to open a folder and then look for us a good point for us to create a directory. So this one, it's not a must for us to use, let's say, a C drive or an E drive. It depends. It depends. So whatever thing I'm going to do on the first step, it's not should not be like mandatory for you to actually create that particular directory. But for the second one, we are supposed to create that directory object as we map what? As we map that particular folder. So for that, we will do it in where? So create directory object in, of course, in SQL+ or, but in this case, you're supposed to create it as, of course, as a super user. as a super user. So there's no way that you can end up creating while connected as HR. So you're not supposed to be connected as HR. Then the final part is now to do what? Is now, of course, in line with create a directory, we are supposed to create a directory object. And so let me make it clear. Here, you're supposed now to grant privileges. Okay. So you can say grant privileges to the directory. To the directory. Then the final step, which is actually step 4. Step 4 means that we need to do what? To export data. Now this time around using what? EXPDP, PDP, and that is it. So this one means that this is for exporting. This one is for exporting, let's say for exporting data. This one is for exporting data, and that is it. Now the same thing for importing, it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy as this. So what happens is, I want first of all to show you how do we create a directory or make a folder. And then from there, we can now go back and import the same data. So these are the requirements. That's just the 4 steps. Create a directory or make a folder, create a directory object as a super user, grant privileges to the directory, then export data using EXPDP. Now, what happens is, you see, when we talk about creating a directory object, this one we are supposed to use it. We are supposed to use the SQL Plus platform. Here again, we are supposed to use the SQL Plus platform, but on the exportation point, we need to use the command prompt. We need to use the command prompt. That means it's actually the CMD. So you have to differentiate. Probably the steps could be as easy as ABC, but now where to create them can be a little bit challenging, or it can be a little bit tricky, because what do I do it in SQL Plus? What do I do in command prompt? So this is what I'm going to take you through. So number 1, we need to create a directory or make a folder. And remember, we want to base it on the 3. Like we need the database. Yes, of course, you can do one at a time, but we want to do it so that we can see what is happening. So we have the database, we have the schemas, and we have the tables. So the 3 directories, we're going to create them as this. Now, so let me take you through. So I'm just opening a folder. Let me create it at C. Let me create it at C drive. So I'm going to create a folder. Just create a folder. And then let me call it data pump. Let me call it data pump. I don't know if I can zoom this one. Let's see, of course, so it does not come up. So data pump. And then inside this data pump, so I want like a folder so that I can have the 3 folders coming in. So number 1, I'm going to create a folder here. I want to call it database. This folder means I'm required to capture the entire database, the details of the entire database. So that's why I'm calling it database. Number 2, I want also a folder that can capture what? Schemas. And then I need a folder that captures what? Tables. So here we have the database, we have the schemas, and we have the tables. So database, schemas, and tables are the 3 folders, but of course we are going to do it one at a time. We want to do it one at a time. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to take you through now, I'm going to take you through now the database part. I want us to see, first of all, how can we move the entire database? Now, so here it means that I'm going to open database. So leave alone the schemas and the tables, we will come into that. So just open the database and then copy this path. So I'm going to copy this path. So it means that for me to get into the database or to store some files in the database, I need to go to C drive, data pump, database. Remember, I told you that it's not a must for you to have it at C drive. You can also have it at E drive, D drive, whichever you want, you can do it. So this one means that I want to copy now the path. So I will just highlight, right click, and then copy. And then I will come now to MySQL Plus. MySQL Plus or MySQL Plus. So as I'm connected as a super user, I need now to create the number 2. If you remember, number 2 is what? Number 2 on this part, number 2 on this side is what? To create a directory object. I want to create a directory object. So what I will do is I will come here. Let me use caps. Just say create directory. Just create directory. Now, what is the name of the directory? What is the name of the directory? So the name of the directory, remember this directory is different. Yes, we know that directory is a folder, but this one is totally different from the folder we have. So I'm going to give a name, create directory. And then because it means to be a full database, I can just give it what? Just a random name. Let me call it ORCL, ORCL full. Or you can call it SAMS full or something. So for this case, I'm going ORCL underscore. Okay, let me call it underscore DB. Or let me just call it full underscore DB. So this one is the name of my what? Of my directory. Now I'm separating them. You see, there are 3 words, but if I want to make them one, then I have to join them by an underscore. So ORCL underscore full underscore DB. And then I will say as what? I will now paste my path. So I want this particular directory, which is being created within the SQL Plus, to be in line with the database folder, to be in line with the database folder. So now, if I press enter, let's see what will happen. It will tell me directory created. It will tell me directory created. So this is the second point, create directory ORCL underscore full underscore DB. So this one is my what? This one is the name of my directory, which is connected to this database. Now, that point is for me now to grant privileges to the directory. So I need to grant 2 privileges to the directory. I need to grant 2 privileges to the directory. One directory is to give full permissions. Is to give full permissions. So I'm going to have it this way: grant. Now, first of all, read, write. Grant, read, write on. Grant, read, write on this one. So I need ORCL underscore full underscore DB and then to HR. Grant, read, write on ORCL underscore full underscore DB to HR. Now remember, because I'm talking about the full database, for this case, I'm only targeting HR because that is the only database I have. But if I want more than this, then I can repeat it several times so that I capture all of them. So grant read write on ORCL underscore full DB to HR. So let me press enter. Okay, let me see. The view does not exist. How do I write it? Table view does not exist. So I'm talking about the ORCL DB. Okay, let me repeat it. This is actually the name I'm trying. Okay. Let me just use lowercase. So grant read write okay, let me just use this ORCL underscore full underscore DB ORCL underscore full underscore DB. So because we need to map it, I think it should be on and then to HR. Okay, let me try it once more. Okay. We do it to ORCL DB on HR. So it should not be in line. Okay, let me just have a review. So we have, you see, if you happen that we have some utilities that can actually help, so don't worry about this. Let me just capture the first. You see, we have these privileges. Yeah, so, okay, on directory, why not put it? So grant read write on directory ORCL to HR. Don't know what's happening. That's the same thing. Okay, let me grant read write on directory. So the directory is ORCL. Let me just copy. Let me just paste to HR. Table or view does not exist. Okay, just a minute. Should be clear. Okay, let's confirm it from this point. Don't know why it's not giving me everything here. Or HR does not. Okay, let me just first of all try connect to HR. Okay, HR is connecting. Now let me repeat it. ORCL full database. Now let me create a different one. Instead of having a very long name, let me just say ORCL underscore full. Name is already in use. Let's say drop directory ORCL underscore full. Okay. So SCR. Okay, let me repeat it at this point. This is the start of all. Press enter, directory created. Read write on ORCL underscore full. What is happening? Table view does not exist. Which table are we talking about here? Okay, let me try. We also have another one. Let me see this one. The second one, whether it's going to go through. For the data pump. Okay, for this one is okay. The first one, I don't know, grant read write on ORCL underscore full. Okay, just the directory. Okay. So I think we need to add the name directory. So here, this is our first point. What happens is that I have created a directory called orcl_full, and then I'm connecting to this particular link, so that anything we capture as export, or as we export the entire database, all the details are going to end up at this particular folder. So that is the reason why we're clicking that. And then because we need to have a read-write, you see, we have 3 permissions. We have read, write, and execute. So we need to have some permissions on this particular directory, so that we are able to write, we are able to read. That means we can open this directory and see the contents. We can also be able to insert or write something on this particular directory. So that's why we're giving it read, write, on. So the word directory, because then this one was missing, then the RCL_full to HR. Now, if we had another, user, because we're talking from the database point of view, we can even do what? Like comma Scott, comma Obama, comma any other user. So since I have only one schema for my case, then we can actually do to HR. Now, so we have 2 very important privileges or rights or permissions. One, we have the issue of read-write, which is of course a requirement. And then again, to activate the data pump within the database, especially from the Oracle engine point of view, we need to have the data pump _exp, that is export_full_database to HR. Now, from there, we are done with what? We are done on the grant privileges to directory. We are done with grant privileges to the directory. Now, on this part, we can still do one more. Remember, this one means what? This one is to create a directory for the entire database. I'm creating a directory for the entire database. So let me create another directory now for the what? For the schemas. Remember, we have this, we have schemas. So I will just open the schemas and then copy the path. Then come to SQL+. And then from this point, I'm going to write create directory. We need now ORCL_schemas. Let me just use the schemas. So this one is connected to schemas. As, then put that, and then we do that. You see directory created. So this one is for the schemas. The same thing, we need to connect now with the rights, or to grant some privileges to this schema or this directory called ORCL_schemas. Now you see, from the database point of view, if you are to move the entire database, the only requirement you need is, as a privilege or an added privilege, is for you to grant data pump _full. So from there, there's no need for you to grant that again, because it's already granted to what? To HR. But of course, if we had other users, you need again to do what? To grant the same permission to those other users. So since we are talking about the schemas under HR, then the only thing we can do is just to grant read-write. Press enter, grant succeeded. So these are the only 2 for the schemas. This for the schemas. And then let's go for the tables. So I will open the tables again, copy the table. Then I will come back to this point. So I need to create for the table. So I will just come here and say ORCL tables. Then of course I will come here and paste it. So this means that all the information for the table, if I'm to export, let's say the 2 tables, 3 tables, then I'm required to use the ORCL_tables. So press enter, directory created, Now, again, the same thing, grant read-write to what? ORCL tables. Perfect. So now you can see that if I'm to export tables, then I need to have a folder and a directory connected to that particular table. So the folder will help us to capture the information coming from the tables. The directory will help us capture the information coming, the schemas. The schemas will also help us to capture information from the schemas point of view. And then of course, we can also have for the entire table, which is actually the ORCL underscore database. So you see, you can do one at a time, but I've decided to create these directories, the 3 directories, and of course, grant permissions to each one. So that once we go to the other side of the CMD or the command prompt, now it will become more easy for us to capture the information therein. So what happens is, this now we are adding to the last stage, which is actually about export data using EXPDP. Export data using EXPDP. Now, this is the most important part. So I am going to open CMD. I'm going to open CMD. And then now, probably I'm going to ensure that I'm operating from the root. I'm operating from the root. So, so since I'm operating from the root, I don't know for the clear CLS, SCR, yeah. So since I'm operating from the root, this means that I want to first of all export. You see where we are starting from. I need to export the database. Look at the database. If I open it, nothing is there. Nothing is there on the database. Now there are 2 files that are going to be created in there. We have the dump file and we have the log file. So we are starting now from the database point of view. And then we move to schemas, and then we move to tables. So let me show you this. So since we have the utility, which is actually EXPDP, what we're going to do is to have EXPDP. And then we need to talk about the HR. You see, HR at ORCL. Now, ORCL is my database name. If your database name is Robert, then you have to talk about HR _ HR, HR/HR at Robert. If it is Fred, Daniel, or even Brian as the database name, then you need to say at Brian, at Daniel, at Fred. Then from there, we need to specify the directory. What was the directory? So you have to talk about directory equals to ORCL _ full. The directory name is very important because it tells you a lot. It tells us a lot about the type of export we are trying to do. Are we moving the entire database? So if you're moving the entire database, then we are supposed to talk from the directory point of view, especially the directory connected to the full database. From there, I expect to create a dump file. So dump file means it's a file that will contain all the data required. You see, if I'm talking about moving the entire database, all database information will be contained under the dump file. So this dump file, I'm supposed to attach a name. So I can call it ORCL _ full.dmp. So it must have an extension .dmp. It must have an extension .dmp. Now, we will have a process that will be executed here. So we need also to capture that process. So I'll just say, it's actually called the log file. Log file, again, I can just give a name like full.log. I can give full.log. And then finally, we also have something called full equals to yes. But most of the time, if you try to execute this full equals to yes, sometimes it does not work. But at some point, probably in your database, it can work. I don't know for mine. I tested sometimes, but it's not working. Now, and we are done with this. So the most important thing, I know we've been executing a lot of SQL statements, but for this case, no need for you to put a semicolon. Don't put a semicolon at the end of it. So what we have here is the EXPDP, and we are connected to this particular database. And then, of course, we have the directory. That is the name of the directory. We have the DAM file, the ORCL_full and .dam. Then we have the log file equals to full.log, and then we have full yes. Now I'm going to press enter to try whether it will be executed with this. So for this case, let me press enter and see what happens. So it will blink, and then let's see what will happen. So if your database is well configured, then you will not have any issues. You will not have any issues. You will actually see as it starts, as it processes a lot of information in there. So let's just wait for a few minutes and see what will happen. If there's any error, then of course it's going to. Now, you see, for example, I have not experienced any error. No error has been experienced here. But what proof that my data pump has worked? What proof do I have? So the proof is that if I go back to the folder, here and open it, now you see I have some information. So this means that my data pump has worked. So you see, if I open the first one, which is actually full, is a log file. If I just open, what will happen? You see, it contains the information. Let me just reduce it. So let me reduce the font. Now look at that. So these are what? These are it's like the execution statistics, how it was executed. Although we were not able to see from this point, but this is exactly what we have experienced. So what happens is that you see now that we have the full, which is actually a log file. But for the DAM file, this one actually contains all the information for the entire database. But for this case, I am unable to open the ORCL_full.dmp because this one is actually in binary format. So it's only the system that can read the second file, which is actually DAM file. And that is how to do what? That is how to move the entire database. So we are moving the entire database by first creating the files or having the whole information within a single file, so that we can use the flash disk and now move to that particular brand new computer. So that is for the entire database. Now, if I open schemas, nothing is there because I have not actually done the schemas. So this brings us to the schema now. So it is actually the same thing. So this time round is the only, yes. Now, because EXPDP is not an SQL command, it's actually a readable from outside the SQL class. So you see, for example, we have these other utilities like Arman. We have a utility called Arman, which is actually an external application. So for that one is actually used for backups and recovery. So the EXPDP is not, yes, it's more of an SQL part of, but it's more of a command prompt. So we do not have any command called EXPDP in SQL Plus. So the only point we can have some reference to it is through the command prompt, as long as you have the database installed into your system. So that is the EXPDP. Is it answered? Now, this brings us now to the schemas. So if you remember, what was the name of the directory? I'm going to maintain the same statement. What is the name of the directory? I mean, the schema is actually called the schemas. I think it is a schemas or schema. Yeah, it is ORCL schemas. So what we intend now is to move a specific schema such as HR. I know I've used HR, but the HR we've actually executed is more of like an entire database. We're talking from the database point of view. But for this one now, we are targeting that particular schema. So what happens if you want, or if you have a schema? So for this one, you just change what? The directory, ORCL_schemas. The dump file, again, you just change it to what? To schema. And then the log file, you can again change it, let's say to schema. And then for this part, for the full equals to yes. Here now, you can even come it and talk about schemas equals to HR. Schemas equals to HR. Schemas equals to HR. Now, for this case, don't put a semicolon. Don't put a semicolon. So now if I press enter, you can see there it is. Now, I don't know for your part, you see for your side, I think when you execute this, it's going to give you like the whole process. You saw the process we had of the log file. So now if I go back to my schema and open it, now you can see that I have what? I have some files. So the most important thing here is actually the .dmp, because this one contains all the information. This one is just a log file that contains the processes, all the steps that took place. So these are the steps that took place. These are the steps that took place. Now, that brings us now to the tables. So for the table here, nothing is there. But how can we do for the table? How can we do for the table? So for the table, it's just the same thing. Now remove, you can remove the schemas. Okay, we can just maintain it. But we need now to talk about the log. We can call it table. The DMP, we can call it ORCL table. Remember, the name of DEM file and log file is up to you, as long as you can extension your .tdmp. Now, for the directory, we need to talk about what? Tables or table. But I think it called the directory nature tables. So it is actually tables. So I can have it as tables. And then now I'm going to add something here. Remember, I'm targeting some few tables from the employee, from HR. So here I'm going to add something called tables equals to, I will have employees, comma, departments, and comma, let me talk about jobs. You see how many tables I'm targeting? I'm targeting the 3 tables. So the word should be tables. Whether it is one or many, you can talk about tables. Then you just take it like that. So now if I press it, enter, you see now it's starting. So this one means I'm only covering, or I'm only interested at the 3 tables: the employees, the departments, and the jobs. The employees, the departments, and the jobs. And there it is. Very simple. So now if I go back to my data pump and open tables, then now you can see that I have some information in there. So this has successfully been executed because we did connect this particular folder to a directory we created. And this means that we are ready now to move our data, whether from the database point of view, from the schema point of view, or from the table point of view. So the only thing now remaining is for us to see the import part, So the import part means that we assume that probably we are taking it to a very brand new database where we don't have these tables, or we can still come back and delete some of these tables and see how can we recover them. So it's more of like you are shifting these tables to a different perspective or different database, or you are shifting the entire schema to a different database, or you're shifting the entire database and remap it to another database or remap it to a new database. So this is all about the data pump as far as using the expdp dump file, the data pump tool. So I think on the next, probably in our next class, we're going now to do the import. So I think I'm going to create or use a different database or use a different computer so that we can see how can we bring it, or how can we import the database created, that is ORCL underscore database, underscore full. How can we import the schemas, which is contained under the schemas, and of course, how can we import the tables, of course, using the IMPDP. So I think now it's clear that you can even use this particular tutorial now for you to practice. So the first thing is to create a directory or make a directory that is manually. Copy the path, come back to SQL Plus, create a directory of a name of your choice. Of course, as you map that path or as you connect to the folder you created, then of course you export. That is the final thing, you do the export of the data. Yeah, so that marks the end. Any question so far from you people?